Our brain is a validation engine. It's not an invalidation engine. It takes hard work to get it to help us invalidate our assumptions or beliefs. So I often find, and you've probably seen the same with an entrepreneur that comes up with this beautiful new product or service. And what did I do? Their confirmation bias gets them to seek out people that confirms that their product is amazing. And anybody that says it's not, they immediately dismiss. What they should do, which is what the scientific method says, try to invalidate your assumption. That's the objective of the scientific method. Find people that don't like it that you believe are dream customers. Your biggest competitor is not the company down the road or across the pond that makes the stuff you do. Your biggest competitor is the no decision of your dream customer. So as an experiment, go and design an experiment to find those dream customers and try to find out why would they say no. It's hard work, but it's so valuable because else we'll default to confirmation bias. We'll seek out the things that will agree with us, and we'll actually, even some of the most highest intelligence people, there's been evidence that you actually become blind to counter evidence because the brain is trying to protect you by not seeing that or finding a reason for that not to happen.
Welcome to the Dov Baron Show. Come for the stories, stay for the learning. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I advise high-performing leaders, organizations, how to harness their emotional source code to purposefully transform their tribe. As someone who's been very guilty of this myself, I've been genuinely fascinated by why smart people make bad decisions and do so repeatedly. Well, what if there's a way to not only understand these patterns, but what if there's a science to breaking them in order to pivot towards even greater levels of success and fulfillment? Today, we're joined by Dr. Alan Barnard. He is one of the world's foremost experts in decision science and the theory of constraints. His groundbreaking research dives into why even the best of us fall prey to decisions that can lead us astray and how we can sort of recalibrate our decision-making processes to foster better outcomes. Dr. Alan Barnard has helped leaders at Fortune 500 companies, individuals in over 70 countries, harness the power of his, what he calls, Procon Cloud method and Harmony decision-making app to make critical life and business decisions effectively. You are tuned into the Dov Baron Show. This isn't just another podcast. It's an exploration into the minds of those shaping the world. Every episode is a raw, unscripted collaboration between my guest and myself as we dive into the truths few dare to ask. We find guests for you who are often quite unknown to the general public, but absolute titans in their field. The kind of people that high-profile leaders turn to when they need an edge. If you're the kind of leader who craves depth over sound bites, hit that subscribe button right now, because this is where real thinkers come to sharpen their edge. For the next 2 episodes, as I said, we're joined by Dr. Alan Barnard, an entrepreneur, a philosopher, a philanthropist, strategic advisor, research scientist, app developer, author, lecturer, and now podcaster. Turn up the volume and help me to welcome returning champion and my mate, Alan Barnard. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you so much, Dov. It's a great honor and privilege to be back here with you.
Always good to chat with you, mate. I've enjoyed all of our talks, both on air and off air. And it was really good to meet up last year. That was really cool too.
Yeah.
To sit together and have a chat in person because you were up here in Vancouver. So before we go anywhere, because there's this theory of constraints, it's a wonderful sounding thing, but let's pretend we're 5 years old. What does it mean? Go explain it to us like we're 5 so people can really grasp what the theory of constraints means.
It's kind of a hack to finding a way, a practical way, when you're trying to analyze or improve or manage any system. It could be a person, could be a company, even a country, right? How do you go about doing that? And in the past, people followed a reductionist approach. You would take the system, you'd break it up into its parts, and you'd think that by analyzing and improving and managing every part, you are analyzing and improving and managing the system. But all that happens is you end up analyzing, improving, and managing the parts at the expense of the system. We call it local optimization.
Yes.
Everybody knows that you should use a system approach, but nobody came up with a practical way of doing that. Like, how do I do it? So if I shouldn't be trying to improve the parts, how can I improve the system? Dr. Eli Goldratt, who ended up becoming my mentor, was the first one to really come up with a very practical solution to this problem. And his big insight was, by analyzing, improving, and managing the constraint of the system, you are in fact analyzing, managing, improving the whole system. So a very simple analogy is, I have a chain and I'm trying to improve the strength of the chain. What is limiting me from improving the strength of that chain is the weakest link. And it doesn't matter whether there's 3 links in the chain, which is a very simple system, or 300 links in that chain. There's always just one weakest link at any point in time. So this gives us this ability to find and focus on just one thing at a time. And by finding out what I need to do, analyzing that weakest link, trying to see what I need to do to improve that weakest link and then to manage it, I am in fact analyzing, managing, improving the whole system until the weakest link is moved. And then I go and repeat the cycle again. So that's kind of in a nutshell of what theory constraints is. It's a very practical way of following a systems approach to analyzing, improving, and managing any system.
Now, you and I have had several conversations about this. And one of the great pushbacks that I hear is, yeah, that's great if you've got one problem. But it seems like when I look at my system, the person says, I can see that there are 5 problems or 3 problems or more problems. And it's not one, it seems to be a bunch of things. Where do I start?
Yeah. And that's a great question. And that's where people, they get drawn to this idea that's so simple and profound. And then they look at their own system and it looks like a mess. So one of the quotes I really love is a quote by Jean-Baptiste Perrin, who's a French physicist. And he basically said that the aim of all science is to substitute visible complexity for invisible simplicity. So when you look at the universe, you see a lot of visible complexity. When you look at your own system and even your own life, there's a lot of visible complexity. But there's this basic belief in science that there's invisible simplicity. Like E equal to mc squared is mathematically incredibly simple correlation, but it explains an enormous amount of visible complexity. So in the same way, you can look at a system and say, what are the key leverage points? There's a goal that I can change, but I have many goals. It's not just a triple bottom line, but it's a quadruple bottom line. I have all of these goals that I want to achieve. When I look at the constraints, I can say there's many constraints that are limiting me. I look at problems, there's many problems. There's many conflicts that I have. There's many potential innovations that I have. And that's the challenge of how do I practically apply it. And the simple hack here is to force a one-to-one pairing every step of the way, but in the following sequence. So I'll take a project environment. A project environment, regardless of the type of project, if it's construction or R&D or an IT system, generally have 3 goals. You want to be on time. You want to be in full, so deliver the full scope. And you want to be on budget. Now that's 3. So I've gone from many goals to few, but I need 1 to focus on.
Okay.
And essentially the advice here is pick the one that if you can achieve that, all the other 3s get better, or at least not worse. And in projects, it's about the total flow time or lead time. If you can find a way to reduce avoidable delays on projects, you will be able to deliver more projects faster, more reliably, lower cost and better quality. So that's how you start with many goals to few to one goal. You think about your own life, you might have many goals in terms of wealth and happiness and health. What is the one goal right now that if you achieve more of that will automatically bring more of the others? For some people, it might be just find the thing that makes me really happy, because when I'm really happy, I'm highly productive and creative, and that will probably have a positive impact on both my health and my wealth. That's the first challenge is, yes, there could be many goals. Even if there's few, that's not enough. I have to pick the one to focus on that can give me all the others. And then I go to the next, there's a one-to-one pairing. Where is the constraint? So if I have a goal of, I want to make an impact or an income, that's my one goal. I want to feed 1 million people or make $1 million this year. Where's my constraint? Do I have enough demand for the product or service that I provide? Yes or no? If no, then that is my one constraint that I have to work on first. If there's enough demand, do I have enough capacity to deliver it? If there is enough capacity, do I have enough supply of some external resource? If that's true, then do I have enough cash? Because I will have to buy some stuff. And lastly, it's management attention. So that's the way that we are dealing with this thing, is we're trying to force one goal, one constraint, and then one problem. What is the problem that I have to solve to get more of that constraint, either by not wasting what I have or by literally getting more? And I'll tie it back to the idea of 80-20. You probably know this, but I think most of the listeners and viewers might not know this. But the most powerful thing of 80-20 is not the fact 20% of the causes can explain 80% of the effect. It's the fact that 80-20 is fractal. It applies on itself. So 20% of the 20%, which is 4, will give me 80% of 80%, 64%, but then I can apply again on itself. And it says 20% of the 4, which is essentially 1, will explain 80% of the 64, which is 51%. So whenever there's a gap in my performance, regardless of what the constraint is, there's always one problem that if I can solve that, I can close about 50% of the gap. So that's kind of how I maintain. I have to fight for it. The visible complexity is there always. I have to fight to find that invisible but inherent simplicity. And the way I get it is by thinking constantly about the one goal, the one constraint, the one problem to solve.
That's a great way of explaining it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Everybody's sort of stuck in too many things, and we're living in a political time that is cognitive overload. And that's a lot of where people are living. Our last conversation, I talked about the 80-20 rule as being a Mandelbrot set. I don't know if you remember that, but that's where I described it as, because if you go 80-20, 80-20, 80-20, and then you do get to the one, but that discipline to choose one, to pick one, I think is where we get stuck. Maybe you have a different point of it, because let me ask you this way. Throughout your career, you've seen patterns of where brilliant minds get stuck. When you've dissected the anatomy of decision-making, if you peel back the layers of daily choices, just everyday choices, from your point of view, what seems to be the emotional undercurrents? Where do you find that people most often misread or entirely overlook even the most astute leaders, the people who just don't get it? What is that emotional undercurrent?
When you introduced me, you said that I study why good people, sometimes even the best of us, make and often repeat bad decisions. And there's 4 main causes that we've identified. So I'll just briefly cover them, and then I can go into a bit more detail for each of those to answer your question. We underestimate completely to what extent our emotions impact our decision making. We have exaggerated fears, frustrations, and expectations that can cause us to overreact and underreact. We don't take the time to pause and respond. We react. So that's number one, is our exaggerated emotions, both positive and negative. So that impulse control is probably, of all the characteristics of great leaders, entrepreneurs, the ability to not just believe that you can do it and must do it, but you're constantly challenging yourself, being self-critical. Those are two aspects, but then the third one is impulse control. So that's number one, is exaggerated emotions. Number two is overwhelm that you've just mentioned. There was a great study that was launched to find out why parole judges, what percentage of people do they release on parole? And what they discovered was early in the morning, 60%, before lunch, it dropped down to 0. And then it spiked up a little bit after lunch, but then approached 0. And the best explanation was it was just decision fatigue. And that overwhelm forces the brain to keep on defaulting to the least risky option. And then many times the least risky option that it feels like is to not make a decision. So that's our second main cause for bad decisions, is we get overwhelmed and we default to what feels the safest rather than what really is the safest. The third one is one that we've picked up a lot, is that a lot of the decisions that we make requires subjectivity. It requires us to deal with enormous amount of uncertainty, complexity, where having built up intuition in those environments become very, very useful. So for you to confidently make a decision, you have to have invested that 10,000 hours or the 10 years or the 20 years. And even then, the insights and intuition that you need might be so counterintuitive. That's why there's always a few of the best and the rest. So the third mistake that we make is we put ourselves or others into situations where we ask them to make decisions that requires intuition, and they haven't yet developed the intuition. And as a result, they make really bad decisions.
So would that be, from your point of view, why young leaders, and by that I don't mean in age, I mean young in the role, make more mistakes?
Absolutely. And part of it, as you rightly pointed out, it doesn't necessarily relate to age. It relates to a big insight that I had, is that we don't learn from experience. We learn from experiments.
Yeah, I think we got to underline that for a moment, because I think that's so important. We don't learn from experience, we learn from experiments. And you don't learn from experiments unless the experiment fails. Human beings are much better at learning when we fail, because it stings, rather than when we don't fail, it's a success. We're like, oh, that's great, I know how to do it now. No, you don't, not yet.
Yeah. And I would go a step further and to say it's not just failure, but what you're really looking for is fast feedback, both in terms of what worked and what didn't work, and to really pay attention to that. So an experiment is not a good experiment if you don't get fast feedback. And the example I often use is, imagine touching a hot stove plate as a little kid, right? And it burns you instantly. That's how our biology has been worked, is that we can learn immediately. We don't need to touch it twice in order to get the lesson. We've learned from an experiment. We were very clear, I wonder what will happen if I touch it. Now I know.
Right.
But just imagine if it burned you a day later or a week later. How long will it take you to figure out that these two events are correlated? So we need to design experiments in a way that we can get very fast feedback.
So that to me is a really interesting point, because most of our feedback systems, they may be immediate, but we've got diffusing systems that don't let us recognize them immediately. And so we go, businesses go down the toilet, and I don't know why. And then we start looking at all the different things. Well, Donald Trump has put tariffs in place. The government has changed. Doge is in place. Canada's putting tariffs against the US. Europe's putting tariffs. And it's like, yeah, those are external. Those are all the outside stuff. And to me, this brings us all back to what you were talking about, picking a single problem.
Yeah.
So do we get fast feedback by doing the same process, by saying, what's the number one thing?
It's definitely helpful, because mistake number two is when we get overwhelmed and we're trying to chase too many goals, too many constraints, too many problems, we get totally overwhelmed. So being able to design an experiment to test one thing, I think is massively important. But I think as important is what you just also explained, is that we need to be aware of confirmation bias. Our brain is a validation engine. It's not an invalidation engine. It takes hard work to get it to help us invalidate our assumptions or beliefs. So I often find, and you've probably seen the same with an entrepreneur that comes up with this beautiful new product or service. And what did I do? Their confirmation bias gets them to seek out people that confirms that their product is amazing. And anybody that says it's not, they immediately dismiss. What they should do, which is what the scientific method says, try to invalidate your assumption. That's the objective of the scientific method. Find people that don't like it, that you believe are dream customers. Your biggest competitor is not the company down the road or across the pond that makes the stuff you do. Your biggest competitor is the no decision of your dream customer. So as an experiment, go and design an experiment to find those dream customers and try to find out why would they say no. It's hard work, but it's so valuable, because else we'll default to confirmation bias. We'll seek out the things that will agree with us, and we'll actually, even some of the most highest intelligence people, there's been evidence that you actually become blind to counter evidence because the brain is trying to protect you by not seeing that or finding a reason for that not to happen. So that's sort of exaggerated emotions as number one. Overwhelm is number two. Lack of intuition, where you simply haven't put in the time and have designed good experiments to learn from each one of them, is number three. And then the fourth one, we have real cognitive limitations. And that's where technology like AI and digital twins and simulation models come in. They allow us to augment our cognitive capacity. Most real world systems are just too complex. We cannot detect patterns. I'll give an example. I used ChatGPT recently to go back to a project I did 15 years ago. And I said, I'm curious, can ChatGPT find what was the one goal, the one constraint, the one problem, the one conflict that had to be resolved, and the one innovation and one experiment, and tell me how many cycles it detect. And I gave it all the interviews I did. Dov, it was amazing. It found 7 cycles, but it found things that I totally missed at that time, because the amount of data we were getting from all the interviews were just so overwhelming that we simplified things. And out of that, we missed some critical things. And the AI picked it up like it was no effort within minutes. So that to me is the last part, is that we have today access to AI, digital twins, that gives us capabilities that we've never had before. And as a result, we should expect to see a dramatic increase in both the quality and speed of our decision making, if we have the courage to use these things for what it was intended for.
So do you see AI as being a great partner in helping us apply the theory of constraints to be able to maybe recognize beyond our own biases about what is the real problem? Because I know what the real problem is. It's me. I don't want to admit that. I'd much rather blame you or it. I'm the problem, but let's not go there.
Yeah. And what I love about it is that it's been designed in a way that it forces it to be objective. And the humans in the loop are constantly helping it to get rid of biases, so you can always look at it from all sides. A practical thing is, if you think about, if I'm trying to sell you my product, there's 2 things that I pay attention to and that I will share with you. I will share with you the unique pros of my product and the unique cons of the competitor or the alternative, right? And that's what I focus on. What you are focusing on is, what is the pros that you would have to give up of the current status quo or the alternative? And what are the cons you have to live with if you adopted my solution? And it's actually hard for me to put myself in your shoes and look at it through your eyes. AI really can help me do that. Whereas I say, I want you to play the role of a dream customer, but it is a highly skeptical customer. Most of the things that they've invested in the past have not worked out. 70% of things fail. I want you to put yourself in that position and tell me all the reasons why this person wouldn't buy or say yes. That's something that we didn't have before AI. If you were lucky, you had a mentor or experienced coach that had 30 years of experience that can give you that counter perspective. But now it's accessible to everybody for $20 a month.
Yeah, I really like that idea of letting it play. And this is good even from understanding my side of things, from the ego point of view, because if I make ChatGPT the skeptic, then nobody has to know. I'm not telling anybody. I can keep that to myself and keep my ego in check, but at the same time, be quite insightful. Because that was the question I was going to ask you, which is the biggest challenge is that we are blind to our own biases. We are looking for confirmation bias. These AI models can become very good for us in saying, what am I not seeing here? Where am I got my blinders on? What are the blind spots I have about this that I'm making it maybe much worse than it actually is, or much better than it actually is? And again, I like the idea of what would be the one thing I would go after, whether that's in a positive or in a negative way of dealing with, that I need to get rid of. I love that.
I think it relates back to, if I can link it back to the theory of constraints. So if you look at ourselves, the bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. It's always us. That's the bottleneck. But then you want to dive a little bit deeper, and it asks you which of your scarce resources has become the bottleneck. And the first one is attention. We have very limited attention. We can misallocate that attention to the wrong people and the wrong things, or we can not allocate it to the right things and the right people. AI, to a large degree, if you haven't done so already, you will soon be able to do so, to create a clone of yourself. So you could be in multiple places all at once, people asking you questions that might never have been able to afford access to you, and they'll find out how Dov would think about this. It's not just what you think, but how you think about it that they can learn from. The question is, okay, so if AI can help to overcome our attention bottleneck, our other bottleneck is trust and motivation. To me, what's very interesting, what you've just mentioned, is when we released one of our decision maker apps with AI built into it, we were very curious how users would respond. And the response was more positive than what we expected, in that they fully trusted that the AI will not judge them. The AI will have empathy and always have their best interests at heart, and always help them to review things from all sides. If it picks up you have a bias, it will immediately ask you to look at things from the other side. So that element of I see, and I'm already seeing how probably the only thing that we will really trust is our own personalized AI version that we know has our best interest at heart.
That for me is fascinating. Let's actually jump off there in part two, because this polarized idea of what AI is, we don't trust it. It's going to become the Terminator, or it's going to be our new best friend. And I don't think it's either. I think it's something in the middle that we determine. I interviewed recently Dakai, who is one of the world's leading experts in AI. He developed Google Translate and Microsoft Translate. So he's been in that world for 40 years. Most of us have never even heard of AI, except for in sci-fi 40 years ago. But, you know, one of the things he talked about is his book is called Raising AI, that we're the parents of AI. As Larry Wingert said, your kids are your own damn fault. And so if AI is our own damn fault, if we don't trust it, it's because we've given it shitty programming. And so I think that this is the interesting piece between, oh, we'll trust it, or, oh, it's completely untrustworthy. With a digital clone, you've programmed it, so you're the one who's going to be, it's going to potentially have your best interests. And I really like that about it. That's what I want to jump into in part 2 of the show. Before we go into part 1 here, I want to make sure that people know where to find out more about you and about all the resources you offer, because I know there's a lot. Please tell people where they can find out more about you.
Sure. My social media handle is just the Dr. Alan Barnard. And I have a channel on YouTube where I share a lot of the research that we do, case studies that we present. So that's a good resource. Also on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all Dr. Alan Barnard. And then our main website that shares all the apps that we've developed that addresses basically those 4 decision mistakes I mentioned: the exaggerated emotions, the overwhelm, the lack of intuition, and the cognitive limitations. They can go to harmonyapps.com.
Fabulous. And of course, we'll make sure that we post all of those links in the show notes. So if you didn't catch them, don't worry. Just scroll down in the show notes. I promise you they'll be there. We're going to be back in just one click for part 2 of our delicious conversation with Dr. Alan Barnard, the leading expert on the theory of constraints, and really to show you how you can make better decisions and not repeat the crappy ones that we all seem to do. I know I have a lot. We're going to be back in just one click, so stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about how you and I can make way better decisions.